could be the epidemiological explanation for that positive result on day 14 for that woman who was travelling alone? Does that story add up to you?
Look, it's the reason we have quarantine lasting 14 days, because we know some people can take that long to actually develop an infection. So if someone was exposed on the plane, that is still feasible. It depends whether it's actually on day 14. They test from day 11 anyway, so we have a bit of a delay sometimes in getting the results in. But the other thing to remember is that we know they're positive when we get the test result in. If they had symptoms earlier, they would be tested then as well. But it's possible they started the infection 5 days earlier but didn't have symptoms, and it wasn't detected until they actually tested them on that in that last period before they would normally have then been released. So it is possible that this is someone who had an asymptomatic infection. It actually did start earlier and they didn't develop symptoms, triggering earlier testing.
Just turning overseas, Catherine, how worried should we be about the discovery of a new strain of the virus in the UK?
Look, I do think it's a concern. We always do hear about people being thinking that they may, in fact, have a new strain because they see some rapid transmission or a rapid escalation in case numbers like they're seeing in the UK. So I think it's genomically distinguishable. They have reported this to the World Health Organization as one of the new variants that we're seeing out there. But at the end of the day, it's probably similar to what we've seen in Australia. New strains come in, they impact different parts of the community. You will get different transmission rates anyway, because it's not just the strain characteristics, it's also the population that's impacted and how much mixing is happening in that population. So there's no signs yet that this is a particularly nasty version of the virus, either because it spreads faster or it causes more disease. And that's important, and equally important that it's not different enough that it likely might escape or evade the vaccine that they're now rolling out in the UK. So we're not worried about that yet either. But just to say, the more transmission we have, the more risk there is that we will continue to see this gradual evolution of the virus, because every person it infects, its multiple replications allow that chance of a mutation just become that little bit more real. So it's absolutely something we have to keep watching.
And what do we actually know about how that's happening, Catherine, how that virus is evolving as it's travelling right around the globe? And when you talk about the extra new strains we're seeing, how many strains are we talking here? Tens, hundreds? I mean, just how quickly is it evolving?
Well, they've got tracking on this the whole time. We're doing genomic testing from isolates collected from all around the world, and that's a very important process to monitor the speed of change, if you like. What we're seeing are different kind of identifiable lineages being recognisable, but not changing some of the fundamental characteristics of this virus. So not the protein spike, which is important in how it infects humans, but also it's the key because that's the focus of the vaccines that we're working with at the moment as well. So they continue to track this. You can get the most subtle of changes, just one building block in the RNA shifts. We can detect that sometimes in our testing to distinguish between strains responsible for different outbreaks, but essentially it's the same virus. So we're really talking about variants, and often the variants are minimal changes within the RNA, and great news to date is that it hasn't actually turned this virus into something that's even harder for us to battle or that has more serious consequences with infection.
We're watching the vaccine now being rolled out in the UK, it's starting in the US, it's on the horizon here in Australia. Are we out of the woods here at home, do you think, or is a second wave a la Melbourne still a very real threat in perhaps other states around the country?
Look, we are at a sort of almost negative pressure situation where the virus is all around us. It's all around the world. It's kicking up again even in some of our Asian neighbour countries, places like South Korea that really had it under control. It's taken off again. So that both reminds us how easy it is for this to really start to fly if you get community transmission. But also the work we have to keep doing to keep the virus at our borders and not getting back into the community. So all the current work reviewing, refining what we do at the hotel quarantine end of things is really critical, because keeping the virus there, we know it's on shore, we have the virus here, but keeping it from the community is that really, really important step to protect us from seeing something like the second wave in Melbourne happening elsewhere, or, heaven forbid, in Melbourne again, So absolutely, keeping the virus out of community, but also making sure that at community level, we're still doing those things that mean even if it escapes and gets through, that it's not going to take off quickly and we'd have a chance to shut it down. So that quick and early response is critical there too, and those mild levels of restrictions we now have in place still are really geared to try and keep that risk as manageably low as it can be.
Catherine Bennett from Deakin University, appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ash.